Our next presentation is on the Central and Coastal Maine forecast with Kevin Fletcher of Northeast Commercial Brokers at Keller Williams Realty. Kevin.
So I just want to applaud all the residential brokers in the room, because I got to tell you, the whole letters to cats and ukulele thing would just, I'm pretty glad I'm sticking to commercial real estate. I want to thank Shelley Clark and MEREDA for allowing me to present again on this program. This is, I don't know, fourth, fifth, sixth time doing this. I've spent 2 decades in this market, certainly something that I'm passionate about growing. Today we're going to cover the markets, just a small sector of Maine: Lewis and Auburn, Augusta, Waterville, Bath, Brunswick, and Topsom. I think that's about 3/4 of the state's population in 25 minutes. We'll go over some notable transactions, discuss some developments and updates, and then take a quick peek at the projections and forecasts for the rest of the year and beyond into 2020. So this slide, not great news. So I decided to hit you with this first. It does get better, I will say that, but I wanted to give you just a quick overview of the commercial lease transactions in the marketplace that we're talking about. This data is pulled from the Maine Commercial Property Exchange. That's the predominant database that us commercial brokers use to share information. Arguably, there's potential that some leases were done that may not have been reported in this, but I would argue that even if I was off by 5 or 10 transactions per marketplace, the news is still fairly staggering. In Lewis and Auburn, and this is all sectors, so this includes industrial, office, retail, so it's all sectors and all space sizes, but it gives you a quick overview of the entire market. So in Lewis and Auburn, there are 198 lease spaces available when I searched. And in 2018, reported lease transactions of only 19. Kennebec County, again, not trying to figure out an easy way to just search, but just an overview of the entire marketplace. There were 269 lease spaces available, and 20 leases were completed in 2018, giving us 13 years of inventory. Bath, Brunswick, and Topsom, again, the same numbers, 149 lease spaces available, 13 were completed in 2018. I don't want to, I wanted to report this with the idea of giving you an understanding of some of the struggles that we face when we're dealing with vacant space, or if you own vacant space inside of these marketplaces, what you could be facing with trying to find some tenants. But on the same token, I do want to articulate that there can be very specific pockets where you can't find space. So if you're looking for 1,400 square feet of Class A office space in any particular sector, you could still be struggling trying to find that space. Same thing if you were looking for 3,000 or 4,000 square feet of industrial, and certain pockets of retail could be very difficult to find. Let's move on to some good news. So sale transactions. So this data is pulled from the multiple listing service, the Maine MLS. Transactions are up and inventory seems to be down. So in the Maine MLS for Androscoggin and Kennebec County, there were 204 properties available in the MLS, ranging from a whopping 25,000 to 2.6 million. 18 pending sales currently, so fairly robust, fairly healthy. 86 properties sold in 2018, giving us a 19% increase over 2017. The prices ranging from 17,000 to 2.8 million. And again, relative to what we're talking about, a fairly decent inventory at 2.5 years. I don't think that's difficult. I don't think that's scary. I don't think that's bad. And just like I did last year, I wanted to pull out and take a look at the market of over 500,000. So we have 46 properties available, which gives us a 16% decrease over $500,000. There were 2 pending, 11 sold, and a 37% increase on that 11 sold from the market the year before. So some notable, so we'll talk about Lewis and Auburn, just a quick overview. What's driving the economy? You got 100,000 people living in Lewis and Auburn, the surrounding communities, 500,000 within 30 miles. 40% of the state's population lives within a 1-hour drive of Lewis and Auburn. driven predominantly by medical, warehouse, and distribution, and we have 6,000 college students in Lewis and Auburn. Some notable transactions that took place in 2018, a direct sale at 65 Mount Auburn Avenue happened, to the best of my knowledge, without a broker, at just over $7 million. 755 Turner Street was the Hobby Lobby project in Auburn. Tom Ogie sold that property. John Doyon from Malone Commercial Brokers was the broker on that one. Sold for $5.5 million. 599 Center Street in Auburn. Craig Young and Chris Pazik from the Bolus Company sold that project for $3 million. I handled the transaction at 1130 Minot Avenue. Was an industrial building for $2.8 million. 305 Center Street was a net leased retail building that's sold by Craig Young and Dan Greenstein from the Bolus Company. 649 Turner Street was an off-market direct sale that sold. This is the former Best Buy in Auburn. This was actually picked up by Evergreen Subaru to move their dealership over to, and that sold for $2.2 million. And then a relatively fun transaction that I handled was 70 Commercial Street in Lewiston. This was Neocraft Signs, if anybody's familiar with that company. Lewiston-based company, been around for a long, long time, expanded their operation into 70 Commercial Street. And then just to talk about some leasing, some fairly robust industrial leasing that took place. Tom Dunham completed the lease at 115 Logistics Drive in Auburn for 60,000 square feet. Sneaking in the last 2 weeks of the year, we filled 50,000 square feet at 225 First Flight Drive in Auburn. That was an industrial lease. And then Bolus handled just over 80,000 square feet for Dave Gendron at 15 Gendron, 1 Gendron, and 4 Gendron Drive to fill some of Dave's vacant stuff over there. And I believe that one of the buildings, 15 Gendron Drive, was actually one spec building that, or to-be-built building that went up. We filled 10,000 feet as a retail brewery. I handled that transaction with Tim Millett from the Bolus Company. That was a former Hammond tractor building that was leased and turned into a brewery. And to my knowledge, they've also got a built-in poutine truck. So if anybody's a big fan of poutine, you can go get a beer, get some poutine. And then Jay Wise from WRE filled just over 16,000 square feet of retail space over at the Lewiston Mall. Some fairly notable developments, and I think this is going to be fairly indicative of some of the trends that you're going to see throughout the region. 62 Spring Street, the Zanton Company is under construction on this building. This is a mixed-use apartment project that's underway just across from the Hannaford by the Auburn Public Library. That's a $5.5 million project. Tom Ogie developed a small strip mall for K Jewelers and Mattress Firm at 65 Mount Auburn Avenue. Kevin Bunker, Developers Collaborative at 477 Minot Avenue. That's a 24-unit apartment project that just broke ground. The Zanton Company is also wrapping up the construction of the Hartley Block project. We talked about that last year at 159 Lisbon Street. That was an infill. It was a big, relatively large vacant lot that was left from a fire. They infilled that with a really attractive 4-story building that's going in there. And then both Valley Distributors and Geiger completed some relatively significant expansions on their existing site. Taking a quick peek at Kennebec County. Kennebec County, I didn't, we all know the marketplace, but I didn't really pull this until this report, but constitutes 4 cities and 25 towns, has a population of just over 120,000 with a median income of $46,000. Again, kind of the general consensus here is you got medical being a fairly large driving force, and it's the largest open-air shopping center north of Boston, housed up there as well. Some relatively significant transactions there. 392 Western Avenue was an apartment project sold by Chris Pazik at the Bolus Company. He co-brokered that deal with Rachel Anderson from Coldwell Banker Plord Real Estate out of Waterville. 23 Bowden Street in Manchester was an office building that sold this fall, $2.3 million. That deal was handled by Tim Millett at the Bolus Company and Craig Church from Balfour Commercial at Keller Williams Realty. The Waterville and Oakland self-storage units, that was a portfolio, it was about 400 self-storage units in a small industrial building. I brokered that deal with Don Plord from Coldwell Banker Plord Real Estate. That was a local investor, and again, fairly indicative of the investment projects, is anything stable in cash flow seems to be flowing out the door pretty fast. 26 Edison Drive in Augusta, Dan Greenstein from the Bolus Company handled that transaction. 390 Western Avenue in Augusta was a retail building that sold for just over $1.5 million by Chris Pazik and Dan Greenstein from the Bolus Company. 40 Waterville Commons in Waterville was a retail sale. That transaction was handled by Charlie Craig at the Dunham Group. And then Don Plord snuck one in right at the end, 25 Verde Drive in Winslow, industrial building sold for $1.25 million. So again, fairly robust investment and sale activity throughout the marketplace. If you haven't driven down Main Street in Waterville lately, I will tell you, it's do yourself a favor. It's quite dramatic, the changes down there. I want to thank Garvin Donegan from the Central Maine Growth Council for his assistance in getting me a bunch of information on the marketplace up there. The Bill and Joan Alphon Main Street Commons is the picture there. That's a development done by Colby College for just over $25 million. It's a civic retail mixed-use facility providing housing for over 200 students in downtown Waterville. I noted the Trafton Road interchange in Waterville that's in, only for the sake of understanding what that has for potential in the marketplace. That interchange opened up 920 acres of developable land in the TIF district. We're going to talk a little bit more about incentives in a few slides, but I think that goes a lot to show as some potential impact to the industrial market and the commercial market. Kennebec Valley Credit Union opened up a new branch, very attractive branch on Main Street in Waterville. Then 13,500 square feet of medical office building was developed for Waterville Pediatrics. And then I want to mention the 250-unit apartment complex on Civic Center Drive in Augusta. Again, we're going to talk about this a little bit in a few slides, but I think that's fairly indicative of some of the things that you're going to see in the future for potential deals in the marketplace. That is from Massachusetts-based Saxton Partners, and they're slated to, they're proposing a 250-unit apartment complex. And then I think that's, again, I think that's relatively important relative to some of the predictions that we're going to see for next year. So at the last minute, well, I shouldn't say last minute, they threw Bath, Brunswick, and Topsham on me. So I tried to dive into it. So I like that marketplace over there. I think you were talking about Northern Cumberland County. I think it taps into the beginning of the mid-coast. I think there's a lot of potential over there. We've done a lot of deals over in that marketplace. And you've got Brunswick Landing. Just an amazing amount of activity taking place in Brunswick Landing. We've heard about that the last 2 or 3 years up here on the stage. 2,100 acres, just over 1.5 million square feet of commercial space. The population and the economy, just over 50,000 people in the region. Median income relatively high at 50,000. Home to Wayfair, Bath Iron Works, 1,800 students. So a fairly robust market as well. And again, not without some insignificant transactions that took place. JHR Development sold 2 medical, net lease medical office buildings. Drew Sigfridson from the Bolus Company represented the seller on those. $8.2 million for 108 Center Street, and then $3.6 million for 430 Bath Road. Dan Greenstein represented the broker from the buyer for Center Street, and Craig Young represented the buyer for 430 Bath Road. 167, 169 Park Road in Brunswick, office building sold for just over $2 million, handled by Greg Bolus and Tim Millett from the Bolus Company, and they brokered that transaction with Nancy Carlton from William Ravis. 6 Parter Street, that was an interesting transaction. That was an apartment building that, again, had multiple offers on it at the time. I was speaking with Jed Rathbian from Keller Williams, who handled the transaction on behalf of the seller. Again, fairly robust investment activities, a fairly stable 21-unit apartment building right near the college. Went out very quickly in a multiple offer situation. 325 Bath Road in Brunswick, 50,000 square foot industrial building sold by Greg Hastings from the Dunham Group. Dan Catlin brokered 3 Industrial Parkway, which was had been on the market for a little bit, sold for $1.5 million. And then 11 Mallard Drive in Brunswick, Chris Pazik sold that for $1.3 million. I was a little surprised at the development taking place over there. I don't think it's indicative to the market. I think it's just indicative to construction costs and maybe just a touch of a blip regarding 2018, because that's a relatively robust development market, but not as many as I had expected to see from a development perspective. The Topsom Care Center was the former Best Buy facility, and that was picked up in a joint venture by Central Maine Healthcare and New England Cancer Specialists, and that was turned into a medical office facility. Cook's Corner in Brunswick, Mark Malone from Malone Commercial Brokers handled, and they're building Convenient MD right on the corner in Cook's Corner. And then Priority Real Estate Group is under development for phase 2 of Wayfair, an expansion for Wayfair. I need to apologize to Sue Spann from Remax Riverside. I don't know if Sue's in the room, but I will tell you, Sue sent me some phenomenal information on a development taking place on Brunswick Landing Homes. Sent me a great picture. I had every intent of putting it into the program. I forgot. So that was probably my procrastination. But I will tell you that she sent me some great information. What they're doing up there is relatively exciting, and again, we're going to talk about this in a couple of slides. But the project's underway. They've received approvals at the fall of 2018. The project has over 13 miles of walking trails, 11 playgrounds, many amenities, much to what was said just a little bit ago. The predominant driving force seems to be 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch-style homes. She's bringing condos, townhouses to the market, multiple neighborhoods in the low to mid-200s. And I think that, again, the marketplace certainly needs some new construction homes up there. I think that goes a lot to what was said regarding the residential market. Sales have already started to take place, and she said that the contracts continue to rise. Sorry, I went backwards. So where do we stand for pockets of opportunity in the future? I will say I chuckled a little bit because I think that some of my predictions kind of matched the MEREDA index, and I will say I didn't see it before, so they didn't slide that over to me. But I think you're going to see in that particular marketplace more significant investment in housing. There's a relatively large stock of older housing in central Maine. So I think you're going to see a lot of investment in housing, new construction of housing, single families and condos, and I think you'll see apartments continue to rise as rents kind of go up, and the need for some safe and affordable housing continues. With that, and as the population kind of shifts around, I think relative to surrounding that, you're going to continue to see deals in the service industry, specifically revolving around medical, niche retail, and anything really kind of serving the population. That seems to be the driving force for deals that you're seeing in that particular market. The marketplace that we're talking about up there really does have a lot to offer. I think, you're talking about lower land costs, typically speaking. That's why I talked about the Trafton Road interchange. Incentives really do seem to be the driving force. They're there, free, ask for them. Your workforce can find affordable housing options, and then you do actually have workforce and the quality of life that market, that region tends to provide for raising families. Overall, I'm extremely optimistic. 2018 was a great year. I continue to remain extremely optimistic for 2019. Despite the first slide that I showed you regarding leasing, I do think that we have a very stable and healthy marketplace for the central Maine and coastal market. I think investment in that region will continue through 2019. Opportunities continue to exist. I feel like I sound like a broken record when I stand up here and say market knowledge is critical. 1 or 2 blocks over can make a difference. I think all sectors will increase to include industrial, and would only caution that I think we have to be cognizant as we get towards the end of 2019 into looking into closing in 2020 or any deals slated for development into 2020. We just have to be kind of cognizant of what's going on and relative to taking a quick peek into the fall of 2019 and just taking a look at the analytics and the data for that. So thank you very much.